Mario de Deus, quem não sou eu? Tudo que eu tenho foi Deus que me deu. Tudo que eu tenho foi Deus que me deu. Ah, na roda da capoeira, grande pequeno sou eu. E camaradinho. Give thanks and praise. Welcome back, everybody. Soliciticity is live on YouTube with his first guest ever. I have extended a branch to our wonderful friend, Joshua the Branch. And he has honored me to come and join. Welcome, LeBranch.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for hosting.
This is so exciting, my friend. I'm so glad that you were available to come along. And maybe we should share some of the synchronicities. I hit up Joshua just yesterday on the fly, on a whim, particularly because of some of the information that I have been garnering from this Emperor card. And sure enough, when I sent that message, Joshua, you said you were on with Chris and Mario from Symbolic Studies, and you were talking about this card. Is that what's up?
Yeah, dude, it you really tripped me out because that show was privately recorded. We're not even premiering it until Friday. And so as soon as I got finished, I noticed I had some messages from you, and I thought, oh, what a pleasant surprise. I haven't heard from Gabriel in a while. So I'm looking through the messages and then start listening to your voice message, and you start talking about the Orange Emperor card from the Crowley deck, and I thought, we were just talking about that. And then you mentioned Clockwork Orange. And I thought, we were just talking about that because we were doing an episode on color. So specifically, when we got to orange, is when these two synchronicities occur. And I hadn't checked the timestamps yet, but yeah, yeah, it's quite potentially true that you did send those at the exact same time we were talking about them. So yeah, when I realized that, it kind of blew my mind.
Oh man, I love it. I love it. These little signposts on the path. Telling us that we are quite found, well
Well,
found.
and that's for me. I like the topic of augury. I had to get
Yeah.
a drink there. Excuse me.
Mhm.
So, augury, in a lot of ways, is typically done with birds, at least for kings and royalty. But for the lesser common people, they were known to use any other animal. Um, but birds were associated with royalty because they rule the skies, right? So for us common folk, we dealt with whatever was on the ground. So the cicada in this case is very fitting sign of for augury because those who live on the ground or under the ground would probably be able to relate more to those creatures. So for that reason too, I kind of thought it was interesting. But a note to add for augury is that it's often not just the animal, but how many of the animals. Well, as you may know with cicadas, there's quite a number of them. So, you know, when you look at tarot, it only goes up to 10. So, I'd have to think that maybe the, 10 card would be actually thousands. So this the cicada of infinity,
Right.
if you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It has the multiplication factor of the x of 10 amplifies.
Yeah. So just like with like the one of cups, two of wands, three of pentacles, um, you would have animals that kind of lie within those domains as well. So I would say if one were to make the effort, could probably map out most of the animals in every kingdom with some suit of the tarot, whether it be a minor arcana or a major arcana. And of course, if we do indeed have that, um, that parallel drawn, then something like your diction of Aries behind you, you see there's another layer to the semi-oracula,
Yeah,
to the, so that's how correspondences tend to work. So those are just some thoughts that I, kind of had in my mind as we
absolutely.
begin.
Nice. You know, some thoughts that led me to value this conversation and bring it into being was learning how the cicadas have adherence to prime numbers, and that bugged me immediately, um, because I got into a numerology phase that I had to really labor to extract myself from. Math has this infallible uh, sense of truth to it, and it becomes intoxicating to know that math reinforces your experience and gives us a universal language, right? Uh, but that I found that it became intoxicating, adhering to math. But then, so I wanted to not get into numerology. I don't want it to be important. I don't want Panta Arithmos. I don't want the Pythagoreans to get a hold of me. The outer order of the Pythagoreans are called the Mathematikoi, and that is that they worship number, they worship math. But big I happen to know there's an inner circle, and that's the Akusmatikoi. And they are strangely illogical. They have a lot of superstitions, probably to do with augury reading. And they have certain rules and obligations that they adhere to that don't make sense at first glance. Some of those little nuanced for the inner circle, some of their practices, I think I've garnered some meaning from. Um, but right away, I was like, I don't want to be one of the numbered. I don't want to be a matematikoi. I don't want to be the outer circle. I don't want to be the profane outside of the temple. I want to know what they're doing in the inner circle. And so I gave myself like a command order to let go of that math shit. We know that like doing a census and numbering the people is forbidden in Old Testament for
Mhm.
very good reason. I happen to think that when they gave us social security numbers, they found a workaround for not numbering the people and not doing a census. And that workaround is you can number your priests. If you make them a priest class, then you can put a number on them. So I think they did a number on us when they gave us social security numbers and we became initiated into the Mathematikoi outer perimeter. In the
Hmm.
outer perimeter, when Pythagoras was in that temple and it was burning down, he used the outer order as human shields, and they laid themselves down on the fire so he could walk across them to get away. And then he goes up against a field of beans, and he has a moment of consciousness that he can't walk through the beans, and they kill him because of his one weakness.
Beans.
So yeah,
Beans were his
beans
kryptonite, huh?
beans were his kryptonite. And it's funny. I suck on beans all day long. I'm
You
drinking
know, did you say Plato?
Pythagoras.
Okay, well, maybe it was him. One of those dudes, they actually told their students not to eat beans. That was like one of
Yes,
their prohibitions.
yes,
So was
that's
that like
Pythag.
something to do with his like did they revere the plant or something? I don't know.
I think that he believed that the transmigration of souls took a path through the beings. And so the beings are part of the process of ascension for certain souls in this world. And
Okay.
because the beings are anatomically so similar to the fetus and the growth cycle of the fetus. He strongly believed, you could say he was a zealot, and so some of these aspects, of dietary choices and even, extreme vegetarian mentality as adhering to some of the practices of Pythagoras. And inevitably, some people come across this on their own and they're not initiated into anything. It's
Mhm.
just a sense that they have about the place. So, um, so yeah, when I realized that the math was for the human shields, and I have this theory that our social security number is a covert initiation that we are expected to believe, live by number. That's when my rebel spirit was like, nah, I ain't down with the outer circle. I went in on the inner circle. What's going on the inner circle? And so I'll say one more little insight. Uh, one of their rules is they're only ever expected to chew their fingernails and spit them out. And you're not allowed to clip them with any tool. You have to chew on it and spit them out. And then they also the other ones like you don't ever put your blade in the fire, which is a means of that's a cauterization process and it sterilizes the metal, but they're not allowed to do that. That's forbidden. So they've got some agreement around Hephaestus and the fire with all that. But
Hmm.
the thing that I know that I'm certain is revealed in the spitting of the fingernails. Oh, another one is you don't piss in the sun. You only piss in your shadow. And that is Gnostic AF. That is so Gnostic. That's so Carl Jung knows all about that, whatever that is. But the chewing on the fingernails and only spitting them, this I believe is breaking off joinder. Um, Not giving joinder to not have. So what happens is it's a part of your flesh. It's still a part of you. And if somebody else
Mhm.
picks it up, then they can create a parallel reality on your fingernail. Matrix because I got a piece. It doesn't have to be real. It's just a parallel reality of that this joinder gives. But if you spit the fingernail out, you sever joinder, and it no longer has command over you, and you've ceremoniously cut that tie. And that's what I think the spitting of the fingernail is. It's preventing any mystical joinder, even of a psychological value. And this is what the birth certificate has done in mass. And so that is one of the reveals of the spitting of the fingernail from the inner circle of the Acus Manticore. So I just wanted to bounce some of my path to why all of a sudden finding out that cicadas do the numbers too, and they bring nature into uh, accord with prime numbers, and that just boggles my mind. And you've been hovering over my shoulder ever since I heard this.
Creating a buzz. Well, hey, happy to talk about the cicadas, but can I comment on a few of the things you mentioned just a moment ago?
Please, please.
I seem to recall one of the other things that Pythagoras told his students to do was you always had to put your shoes on right first. You couldn't go left. He didn't want you doing that. Because I remember that and the bean eating, no beans. I was like, why? Because I'm left-handed, so things like that stand out to me. And my dad used to always tell me it was a right-handed world, right? So, I always did things backwards and I'm kind of clumsy, so on and so forth. So I wondered if maybe Pythagoras was somehow, because he studied math, maybe he was familiar with these phi ratio spirals or the fact that, how DNA has that spiral. And we see the spiral in so many things in our world. And so I wondered if maybe he was just really in tune with that and knew, oh, we should go with the flow, not against the flow, because if you think about it, that might be why left-handed people are so clumsy, right? By reputation, is because we're always going against the flow, and so there's a force in physics called torque you can measure with your hand. So if you were to spin a spoked wheel, You put your finger like this, and whichever way I think it's with your right hand, whichever way your thumb's pointing is the direction of the torque. Um, so that kind of thing uh, came to mind hearing you talk about Pythagoras. But with the nail spitting, um, first of all, we're using the word nail, which makes me think of the Hebrew letter Vav. So, you can almost think of each finger as like a nail, and at least ends with a nail. So that's Vav, 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 Vav. Vav is 6 in the Hebrew alphabet. So I guess your hand would total to 30 in that case. I'm not sure there's any paths that branch out from that, but I couldn't help but think of nails when you were talking about those. And I think maybe the prohibition against eating them could be, well, obviously it can harm your gut if you were to swallow them, but I think also it was probably a prohibition against cannibalism because with the Greeks, we have to remember Saturn was the cannibal that ate the gods, right? And so like they got a long history of there was nothing you could do to really abhor the gods more than to consume human flesh. And so that's why we see stories sometimes of like with Tantalus, I think is one, and Ke- Cheops maybe is another. I think in that Cheops story, Minerva eats a shoulder of that guy without knowing it. And then in Tantalus, I think he makes his son into a stew and tries to feed it to the gods. So,
Yeah.
just to kind of frame that attitude they had, that was like, but maybe they're, because I know some of the academics kind of distant themselves from deity a little more. So maybe it was like a vestigial thing that they still did, but didn't really know why. Maybe it was tradition. Um, so those are just a few of the things that came to mind. But there was one more with the fingernail thing that I thought might be worth mentioning because it's so unique. I think it's in Norse. I don't even like to say mythology because I don't think all of these things are necessarily untrue. But in the Norse traditions, there's a story about a ship that is made entirely of fingernails, I think it is. And
Oh.
it's a hard to pronounce word for me. It's like Nagelfager or something like that. If
Sure.
Zaralath's in the chat, he'll know what it is, I'm sure. But but anyway, there's a ship basically at the end days, Ragnarok era. This ship is coming, and I can't remember who is on it. It's not. I don't think it's good. But it's so the think of all the pieces of nails that have been shed from humans over time. Apparently, this ship is comprised of all of those fingernail shards, finger and toenails, I guess. Yeah, yeah, your toes would have nails too, so we got quite a few nails when you think about it. And Christ, of course, was fixed to the cross with 3 nails. Um, so for what it's worth, there could be something there. But yeah, so I didn't want to get hung up on Pythagoras or whatever, but those were some of the thoughts that were in my head. I wanted to get those out.
This is great. This is great. We're leaving little artifacts that we can go back and pick up and grow out of. One of my favorite things about these meetings of the mind that we have is post production epiphanies.
Hmm.
These little thought forms, they grow into huge trees, and after a couple months, we got forests where we were just speculating before. More branches than ever, man. That's
Well, and
great.
that's kind of how the Bible mentions too, is like a mustard seed can move a mountain because it's one of the smallest seeds, but is also one of the greatest trees. So a thought is a lot like that too. When you sow seeds, it might take a while, but I was just at my client's house before I got here, and they had propagated a pineapple. I was commenting on like, oh wow, how good it looks. Like everybody's probably tried it at least once or twice, but how often do we stick with it and get a that looks like a pineapple, doesn't it? And they had been raising it for several years, and I was like, "Hey, you might start to see pineapple in there soon." And the mom was like, "Well, I think it takes 6 years." And I thought, well, you're probably right about that because the rootstock has to be able to do that function and have the nutrients for it. And it just makes me think how things do a lot of times take seasons. And um, we got to be patient with people too, because let's say you sow an idea, and if it did bear fruit immediately, that might break the branches of that tree, And so it always makes me think about the Kabbalah, how we're not really supposed to study it till we're 42. And I myself will be turning 39 in April. So I'm looking forward to getting to that because I know I'm probably studying stuff I shouldn't be. You know that when you're studying something, you're like, I really shouldn't be studying this.
Oh man,
And
yeah.
and so it gives you something to look forward to because like, okay, by the time I'm that age, my tree will be able to handle the weight of that fruit, you know. So I think it's made me a little more cautious too about sharing things. Um, so I try to only share things now, like if people ask, well, then I'll share what I know. But if somebody didn't ask, I have to, because then you bear some of that consequence, like if I break their branches, that might be my fault, right? Break their mind or whatever. And so when you study you're talking about the drunkenness of numbers, it's like, well, when you start getting into the realm of truth and math and all this stuff, you can go mad. And I don't know. I think it's important to always remind ourselves that we got to be patient with ourselves and really focus on our root chakra, our root stock, and making our vessels capable of containing uh, what we're trying to bring into it, lest we spoil, you know. But anyway, didn't want to go off
Love it.
in 100
I love
miles in
it.
that direction, but it's something that's been on my mind a lot lately as I've aged, I guess. And so I thought I would share that.
That's
By the
great,
way,
man. Yeah.
your beard looks amazing. I forgot to
Well,
mention
thanks.
that.
Yeah, this is every day is a new record breaking.
Straight up hermit vibes, man. And see,
Nice.
I've been just starting to get gray too, and that's so that again, it always brings me back to like the hermit card. Uh, he's at that point where he can start studying that stuff, and that's what his lantern represents, is that
Mm,
that light,
yes.
which is also the logos, of course.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, I learned this from watching Zerlath.
Yeah, he's got a good beard too, and hair. Hey
Just
PK, what's up, man?
take the shirt
Yeah.
off and start beating stuff up.
And Polly, I think Polly and PK showed up in the chat actually.
Yes, big love, everybody. I'm glad everyone made it. So I'm going to give you a little walk through the Slick Dissident Capoeira Symposium, and there's actually I have one little adjustment or addendum to the last update on my channel. I essentially put instruments in the hands of almost all of the cards here, at least one instrument in each of the 9 stations, at least. Um, and I have just a little tweaking to my bateria. The bateria is it's actually a bench. It's traditionally just a bench, which is the word for the judge. The recumbent in the ceremony is at the bench. And in Portuguese, we call it the banco. And the banco is the seat that the instruments are perched upon, very carefully perched. You want the right players in the right spots for the right songs at the right timing of the ebb and flow of the ceremony. But that bonko is also a move that we do. It's also one of the. It's a bridge. It's a back bridge, and so elements of the music are also expressed in the language of the moves. Um, but I think the bonko, the bridge, is actually the tower card, because my main beer and bow, the central instruments of the bateria, they traditionally share the same seat, and then that little perch is kind of like the temple. You can take it and go anywhere, but that some schools, their actual location for the ceremony, it is sacred, where they put their tuchus, when they're honoring the elders. So I'm actually really inclined to call the tower card the bench that the Bataria is centered upon. I think that's beautiful because uh, I've associated it with Pegasus and the Pontifex Maximus, the Pope. He is the bridge builder. But in this ceremony, that Pope can go wander off because in Capoeira, the bridge, the Pontifex Maximus is the shared seating space of the instruments. But uh, I mentioned in my last update of the musical instruments, I said that this adjustment card, because it generally is associated with balance and being centered, I connected it to the middle berimbau, which has this shaped gourd. It has a little more depth to the gourd as opposed to the mama is got a big wide hips. So this is the gunga, this is the base, this is the meju, it's the middle, and then we have a viola is the smaller, and this is a mosquito, often sounds very high pitched as the mosquito buzz to it, and more complicated rhythms come out of the mosquito. Um, but I want to make an addendum. I want to adjust my adjustment card. No longer do I think it is the meju or the middle berimbau. I want to give the art card an association to this meju berimbau. Because of the she's backdropped by a gourd that has the depth required. I guess who should I move? The card or the phone? I'm going to move the card. So she has the exact depth that's signified by
Oh,
this.
pardon me, I was muted. I was going to ask, yeah, can you show that to us?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think she represents this type of berimbau even more so. You can see how the strings tie the berimbau on the inside. And these strings are loosely hanging, much like her samurai helmet and her headdress that she's wearing. And so I'm going to associate her more so with the middle balanced berimbau. And that's just a little adjustment from my notes from before, my previous claims. And the reason why this is satisfying in terms of the archetypes of the Enneagram is I'm finding a better balance by making this adjustment, because what happens now is the she is the 5 card. That's the beginning of the thinking groups in the Enneagram. So the medium berimbau, her measure is Hermes. Hermes is the number 5 quintessential Hellenized mentality of a number 5 is Hermes, and this is her playing her measure of temperance. She has temperance, and that is true to the spirit of this berimbau. So I'm making this adjustment that she now has dominion over the medium tempered berimbau here in the 5, the beginning of the thinking personality types. And then I'm giving the viola or the mosquito, the higher pitched. I'm going to put that in the hands of the number 6. And then number 7 still is the gunga, the biggest, the brain, mama zebra berimbau. And that is the enthusiast with the shadow of a glutton. And what I love about that is that capoeira is based on the dancing mating rituals of the zebras, and the whole social status and hierarchy of zebras is immortalized in our practice. And this is so rewarding to me because I am so convinced that Socrates is Set Archos. His name in reverse is Set Archos. And for the masses, for the Aphrodite Pandemos, they want to think of Set Archos as a donkey, a mule, a sullied, silly animal that doesn't have that is uncouth, and that benefits the Setian mentality to be misunderstood or considered below others. But if you read between the lines, Socrates was quite above his adversaries, quite above his adversaries. And this is how the zebra is camouflaged. Can be right in the middle, right in front of your eyes, and you don't even see what you're looking at. And that is the camouflage of Socratic wisdom, is speaking between the lines. So yeah, the zebra of Socrates being deified or not deified, but venerated. That's it, venerated in the ritual of capoeira. It's such a reward. It's such a reward. So Socrates has the big mama zebra beer bow. The sixth position in the symposium is an empty seat, but the muse of the empty seat is the erotic muse. And so it's all sixy. It's very sixy, this empty one who is yet to come. There's a lot of allure to the number 6 of this seat in the symposium, and that's the mosquito beerbow. And yeah, but what's also rewarding, I just say this, is those are the 3 thinking stations of an Enneagram. So there's a beerbow in the thought, at the crowning, the thought uh, uh, stations of the entire production. And then as I go around the rest of the instruments, they become that's the end of the string instruments. The rest of them are percussive,
Mhm.
scratching wood, metal, and drum. So yeah, I just wanted to announce that I'm moving my medium beerbow off of the Daikyosune of the adjustment card up here, and it's now Hermes. Hermes is Hermes, is her measure of the medium-sized beerbow. And then I'll just skip to the front because I don't want to drag through too much. But essentially, we got this is here. I'm going to move the camera
I think, yeah, that'll help. Thank you.
so you guys can see.
Was that card number 5? Is that marriage? Is that the
Nope.
marriage tarot?
Number 6 is marriage.
Oh, okay.
And one
So,
thing I'll tell.
which is that? Because the tape was, I think, over the title of the card. I couldn't remember which it was.
Oh yeah, this one is art card.
Oh,
And
art. Okay.
art in this deck it's art, but in the other decks this would be temperance,
Okay.
and it's very Sagittarian. And like in a lot of Rider-Waite decks, the Magi is also Sagittarian, and he has his workstation, his table is with him, with all the things he's going to need on the table ready to go. Well,
Mhm.
she now has the table in this deck, but she shares that Sagittarian aspect. And what I love about and there is a bow. She's got an arrow shooting up her midpoint, up her center, up her middle,
And she's adding
and
water and fire to the chalice,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
blood and milk coming from the. Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool actually. Because if you notice how the phoenix or bird, it seems like it's dispensing with milk. There are
hmm
certain, or it could be water actually from the chalice above. Okay, maybe not. Well, there are
yeah.
certain birds that you often see the phoenix biting itself and feeding its young its blood for nourishment. And then there are like pigeons. There are some birds that have a crop. Um, they can dispense milk. Yeah,
That's
you
crazy.
wouldn't you
That's
wouldn't normally think that birds could do that, but yeah. So I would just thought maybe that was it at first, but
nice.
there was another thought I had, by the way. Um, so the instrument, the woman with the instrument, is like an initiatory uh, kind of position in a sense too, because a lot of times you'll see like a female priestess with the rattle, and so I know she's got a stringed instrument, which you'll see sometimes with lyres or some type of stringed instrument of some sort, like a violin. But in another case, like you said, with percussion, you'll sometimes see, like, I think maybe Kybele. I think she's Mediterranean. She'll sometimes have a rattle. I think it's called a cistern or something like that.
Yes, totally.
Um,
Yep.
and so I think what that purpose of that is to saturate the surrounding area with that
Wow.
vibration. So it's almost like you're priming, like you said last night, you're priming the act. So I
Mm.
think the Rosicrucians may have even used instruments like that too. Like sometimes I see a picture of them in their robes and they'll be holding like a violin or something like that. And I
Mhm.
makes good sense to me. So one more thought I wanted to share was you were talking about the measures. Well, with I think it was Pythagoras and perhaps some others, they had I can share this with you afterwards, but there's like a map where it's got each of the planets kind of mapped in their own spheres. And this is where the music of the spheres comes from, is that they're in different ratios. And that's where we get our tones and harmony and things like that from. So I think that's why we instinctively think that things sound good, is because just like with that right turn of the earth or universe, I don't know how far out the turn goes, but if we go against that, it makes life harder, right? Well, if you go with a dissonant tone, that too is going to create that disharmony or that discord. So seeking that harmony and that completeness with the tone, I think in the long run, you're getting better gas mileage, so to speak. Um, so anyway, those are
Right.
just some of the thoughts I wanted to share that were crossing my mind as you were talking about that
I
particular
love
card
it.
there.
So the other card in that station is the Hierophant. They're both Rachel, I saw you said art card number 6. I think she's number 14, which sums up to a 5. I At least in this deck, she's number 14. It gives her a number 5, and her counterpart will be the Hierophant, who's also a number 5. Um, and he has his 2 fingers in this deck. His 2 fingers are to the ground, and I've actually put a shaker in those fingers. I gave him the egg shaker, and I love the egg shaker. It's a great samba instrument. Yeah, you got it. It's all good. It's all good. Um, but that's interesting because LeBranch was talking about a rattle in correspondence to that number 5. Yeah, buddy, that was a great call. There is a rattle in the Hierophant's hand. Um, and then you mentioned the other kind of rattle. You said it's shaped like an ankh.
Yeah, it does kind of look like it would have some electrical properties, but I think it's made of copper, and basically it's got like a loop in it, and then there's a few different bars, and then there's these
Yes.
pieces on each bar. So when you shake it, I guess it's meant to do like this, and then
Yeah.
it'll make a rattling sound. So I would imagine
I've
that's
been
part of the initiatory rites. And
I've
you
been
know,
looking for an instrument to attach to this. Like I wanted to do the triangle
well,
for the
kind of reminds
hangman
me of
card.
it reminds me of the tambourine, is what it reminds me
The
of.
sound of it. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I think this could be that ankh rattle that we're talking about.
yeah, that,
It could also.
yeah, exactly. That would you could make one out of that easily.
Yep. And there's like rattlesnake. There's like 2 scales of rattling. So
And
the different types of rattle coming off of it. This is strangely enough, this is Harry Houdini, who was playing a huge Judas Iscariot spell in his death. His death ritual was a Judas Iscariot Halloween gut your pumpkin spell with his ruptured spleen. But this is Harry Houdini. In also the front of Stanford and the map of the Stanford University is encoded in that card from some of my research. But I love turning it into an Ankh rattle. I love that you just did that for me. That puts another instrument. That was a missing spot in my symposium, my musical symposium I'm constructing. I didn't have anything associated musically there. So I think you
well,
just answered that for me.
well, you might want to, I guess, put some thought into like how long the things are, and because I would imagine like with this, there's probably differences in the lengths of the pieces because each one will make a different tone, right?
Cistern.
Mhm.
Cistern. You
Yeah,
called it a
so that
cistern.
that is what it was called? Okay.
Yeah,
I thought
I
that's what it
remember
was
that.
called, but sometimes I get my memory's not as good as I think it is.
I love that. Yep,
I
I
did
think you
find
do.
my AE weight deck though, so I'll try to find that card, but I don't know if I'll find it before we're finished. because there's
Nice.
so many. It'll
So,
probably be the last one.
so
Oh,
some
actually, no.
people haven't heard my huge revelation story, so I'm going to regale everybody one more time.
Sure.
Hey, thanks for my wrenches out there. I see my ninjas at work. Why? Keep it up, y'all. Good job. So yeah, one of my fantastic stories is that my first day of capoeira, I had this amazing maneuver that captivated my heart and my soul for the rest of my life from this red-headed goddess named Anna Peterson. She almost has the same name as me. We're very tightly interbound karmically. And I've been doing these tarot uh, uh, decodes for 2 years, maybe longer. And it's taken this long for me to realize that the Fool card was the helicopter kick that Anna Peterson initiated me with on the first day I fell in love with capoeira. And that has been a very profound realization for me. And then I find out that this little flower is actually a Procyon flower that relates to the Brazilian flag. And so there's more on that on my channel that I've been documenting. But I just wanted to share also that it's not just finding the musical instruments. I'm finding the actual maneuvers anatomically in these cards as well. And a lot of people remember Eddie Guardo from, like, I think it's Tekken or Street Fighter, some kind of Xbox video game. Well, this glyph means ox bow, ox plow, and it was on Xbox that people were getting their Procyon handed to them by Eddie Guardo. And funny enough, it is the gourd in Gnostic religions. They use the gourd up the ass for a sacred cleansing, you know. And today you go to the proctologist, the proctologist, to have a gourd kick your ass and clean you out and get your act straight. So yeah, so many fun analytical puns come out of that little flower right there. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been on to. And then so the next two instruments that have been really rewarding is the Empress card. She has the cowbell in her hands. I can tell by the way her hands, one is cupping down here and the other hand is has position to drop perfectly in the anatomical strike path of holding the cowbell of the capoeira symposium. And then her counterpart, the emperor, her man, you could say, is Orange Man Bad, that has caught my attention. And his anatomical expression is exactly how you stroke the heckle heckle, which is most people recognize as just a scratchy stick. That's what we would call it in English. But it's the RECO, RECO. And so this has an echo, echo to it that goes into the programming of the cicada. And that's when I started to realize I need you on here to take me further, buddy. These are the eyes of the cicada. The gourd in his hands, all that gourd needs is abrasive edges carved into it. And he runs the stick along his globus cruciger, and he can play sacred rhythms and summon powerful mathematical truths into the space through the scratchy stick implement.
Dude, you just blew my mind. If you don't mind, I'll point some things out on the card. So, okay, so you're talking about how it looks like a cicada there. Well, I never would have thought that until you just mentioned it, and I kind of see it. So, it reminded me of the scripture in Revelation. It talks about the locusts that come from the bottomless pit, and they have a king over them. It's probably this emperor right here, which I've often uh, drawn parallels to the lamb, the wrath of the lamb. You see the
Yeah,
lambs down there at his feet. The this lamb that brings wrath, I've a lot of times associated with this character too, and I think Jehovah Witnesses might even kind of associate him with it as well, because the 144,000 that are mentioned also in Revelation stand with the lamb, and so there's more numbers for you. 12 times 12, you'll get 144, but also 72 times 2 will give you 144. 72 can reference like the number of syllables in the name of God. Well, number of syllables is actually 216. 72 names with 3 syllables apiece. He'll give you that. So anyway, so the emperor is adorned with this lamb symbolism, and so we got this Aries kind of vibe going on there. Um, but when we were talking about color last night, and orange especially, and it wasn't until I started looking at the colors the way I was and mapping them out with the you mentioned like the bridge earlier, right? So I've been looking at this, the salts of salvation, and it's got like a human body in a pose where the head's right here and the feet are right here, and so the head and the feet are touching, and so then around it, you have each zodiacal sign, and then the corresponding cell salts and each color as well. So it goes from red all the way to blue. But what's kind of unique about this is that Aries isn't purely red. It's more like a magenta purple because you get violet in Pisces. So as it's transitioning from Pisces into Aries, you go through basically pink, like what we're in now. That's why pink's such a big deal right now because we're just that's this part of the light spectrum that we're in. And so as we transition through this pink and get into the magenta as we enter red again, well, it doesn't actually kind of turn orange until you get into you know, through Taurus into Gemini, and it kind of made me remember something. Um, so there's basically this holy arc of the covenant, for instance. You got your degrees from Aries to Gemini, very in particular, because that's when the sun is gaining strength and it becomes the emperor, right? And then it's after that peak in heaven where it has the most strength, it's then the king dies and the sun begins to decline. And that's as we move toward tabernacles and the day of judgment. And that's all in the fall time, right? So this card in particular being, if it were just the red emperor, then it would be like, oh, okay, Aries, red, sure. But then I
Yep.
started thinking, why is it orange? And I thought, well, orange spans that holy arc. So he's not just talking about Aries. And so when you mentioned that the three sharing the same bench, that's where in my head I'm like, oh, okay, so Aries, Taurus, and Gemini share the same bench, right? So they got that same art. Yeah, there you go. So you could even associate musical notes with each of those, and probably get a tritone, for instance, and some harmony. And of course, you can do that with several of the signs, but those three in particular, I think, are considered like the holy creatures, like lambs and bulls and doves. Like Gemini doesn't have an animal association so much, but I would assign the dove to that because whenever you're having Pentecost, which is 50 days from Passover, you're still kind of in that same arc. And that's when the Holy Spirit descended at Pentecost as a dove, right? So that's kind of how they
Mhm.
liken a rushing wind, a cloven tongue of fire, these sorts of things. And I also started thinking about, okay, so as you're changing color down through the body, it's like magenta up here, which you a lot of times see the crown chakra purple, right, or magenta. Um, but then as you descend, your red goes through here. Well, when you get to Taurus, which is the neck, the throat, the mouth, and then the shoulders start to get into Gemini. This is where the orange appears. So the
Mhm.
emperor sitting on his throne, if he's sitting silent, he's thinking, right? Well, when an order is thought of in the mind and dispensed with from the mouth, that's when it becomes a bull, or a bull of heaven in this case, if you're thinking of like God in heaven. And the bulls are the Taurus energy there, right? Being spoken decrees. And then the rest of the angels that are not in that arc degree, they all serve them, I think. In fact, I think these are
Yes.
like some of the highest order, like your cherubim and such. And because the bull is a cherubim, it's like one of the, in some cases,
Tetramorph.
might even be, and Metatron would be another kind of good example of like the bull of heaven. And
Yeah.
sometimes the mistake is made sometimes of worshiping Metatron, worshiping the voice and not God. And there's stories of Metatron even being punished for allowing people to indulge in that mistake and worship him. He accepted. So there's stories like him getting lashed, for instance. Um, so I think when we look at that emperor, it's got the Aries lamb symbolism, but also with that orange, I think it's kind of pulling in the bull, but it's subtle, of course. And there's another animal on there. Can you
Yes.
show that just one more time? Is that a phoenix or
Yep.
double-headed phoenix?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So that again, that would remind me of the Gemini energy in it then,
Totally.
the dual stuff. So
Yes.
yeah. So
You
for
you
me,
could
that go
you
ahead.
could you could almost say that because he's on the balanced on one foot, he encapsulates the equinox, the spring equinox with the balancing point. But then he has the leg crossing over that, so he also encapsulates the solstice. So what you're saying about how it's an amalgam of all three, I totally see that.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's got the lamb, he's got a bull in his lap, he's holding the globus cruciger, and then the twinning aspect of the two-headed phoenix. It's like boom, bam, bing, one, two, three, and then the globus cruciger is an interesting word to bring in correspondence to Taurus because one of its minor deacons is Auriga, the charioteer. And Auriga, I see, mm, it just has the word augur. It has the word augur in it. And I
Hmm.
know that during celebrations of the volcano, they would sacrifice animals a great deal. So the augur of Auriga, Auriga becomes Vulcan, the god of the volcano. So volcanoes are earth-based elements. We're an earth element of the Taurus, and Auriga, the charioteer, he's a ancestor of Hephaestus. He's of the Hephaestus lineage mythologically, and that's one we've done a lot of work on. So there's strong augurs with that as well. So yeah, man, I can't confirm your feelings more. That's just so spot on that the emperor has the entire spring encapsulated into symbology, more so than just a single card. And I love that you mentioned it turns into orange. It has to become orange,
Hmm.
and that's what was drawing you out, was leading you to find more. You know, you totally justify it in my mind. I see it, buddy.
There's another thing I can mention because again, during that live stream we were doing together, Chris and Mario and I, we just well, not live stream, but we recorded a stream. It'll be premiered Friday. But during that, we were talking about red and ochre, and yellow and orange, like all those colors. And um, we were thinking of the people that painted themselves red, and we couldn't quite think of who it was. So I did a quick search while we were doing it, the recording, and um, it was the Aurigian Asians or something like that. So the Auriga, like you just said,
Hmm.
that, but the people of that, like I can't
Yeah.
pronounce it the correct way, but those people were like the Picts and the Irish, and
Hmm.
so I think it might have even kind of helped Ireland get its name. Like, well, that's the land of the people that paint themselves red and they're crazy and violent, and they'll kill you. To stay away. And but it was thought that ochre was the first medicament as well because it was used to stop bleeding, like you said, cauterizing wounds earlier. So they would use it
Hmm.
to pack wounds, to protect themselves from the sun. There's a few uses for it, but and it was also the first pigment used in cave paintings. Um, so anytime you see one of those ancient cave paintings, like with the handprint or whatever, they're painting like the animals, there's probably going to be ochre in that. So it's thought to be one of the oldest pigments known to man. So, but yeah, the Augurians or
Yeah.
Asians or something like that.
Yeah. And
Just look for ochre. You'll find it on the Wikipedia page for ochre.
nice. Yeah, Hephaestus or Odriga generally actually has two falls in his biography. As a child, he's so repulsive, and he makes all the Olympian gods uh, revile or recoil at the sight of him. So he's not highborn. He's some sort of uh, uh, mutation, and he gets literally yeeted off of Olympus. And Zeus is like, "Get this guy out of here." Well, what's fascinating is that's in many cultures that's what they did with children who didn't look like they had a good chance in life, and they had a sacred location where they would take these these lives that weren't going to make it, and this was giving it back to earth. And we project our mentality for our abundance from today back on these stories, but for them it was the right thing to do. For us it's appalling. um, but the fascinating thing is Hephaestus goes through that first outcast, and where he's discarded. He's discarded. That dynamic is in Descartes' name. I think Descartes' daemonic genius is Hephaestus, but I don't want to get into that too much. But that first time he's thrown out, he lands in the water, and it's the water nymphs who capture him. And then he gains mastery over oceanic techne. Some believe he made the boats first, and then he was lauded into the landlubbers. They took him in from his first technology, and then he became a master blacksmith over earth-based elements. And then he made chariots that were masters of rolling over the earth. So technically, he first mastered the watercraft. Then he gained approval of the land-based cultures, and they took his art in. And then he became a master of the ground chariot. So all those vessels are attributed to his path, and then he works his way into the good graces of the Olympians. He bribes his way back up into the Olympian pantheon, and he gives golden sandals to all the little gods. Apollo and Neptune and all the little gods. They get gold sandals. He's bribing his way in, and he's got this masterpiece, this master plan, and it is the golden throne that he has crafted, that he gifts to his mama Hera. Hera is over here in the High Priestess card, and she's so smitten by the fact that all you suckers got shoes, and I get this nice throne, and is playing to her pride. Pride. She has the spirit of pride is named Lucifer, and so he's playing to her pride and expecting her magnanimity to reward him. And she gets when she sits down in the throne, she invites him in for like a ceremonial first time in the seat. I'm accepting your gift, and I want you to be here as I take your gift and accept it. And as soon as she sits down, snap, the chains lock her down into the throne, and the tables have turned. And now Hephaestus can grill her on his origin. And he wants to know, who was my daddy? Who made me? What's up with these legs? How did I come to be this way? And so the beauty of this story is that the answer is actually between the lines. I'm not going to give up the ghost on that. I think everybody should go figure it out. Find out who Ariga's daddy is. It's in there. You can find it if you care to. But um, so a great amount of the dynamics of these elements and these relationships in the Enneagram, I think, uh, are actually preserved in the stories of the Greeks in really fun ways. But um, the prime, the prime numbers, I go all this way to avoid getting into the magic of math magic, and here I come around full circle. And this card and its relationship to the cicadas, um, it's got me trapped again. And I'm compelled uh, to look at the primes in a new light I'm because Amazon Prime.
Mm.
Amazon l- real long story short, I worked at Whole Foods for over a decade. And when Amazon bought our company, the rats started jumping ship hard and fast. And the owner of that company, he came to my store and gave a personal speech on his last day in the company. And he was telling everybody in a very positive light. He was speaking between the lines, and I didn't understand irony at the time because I was young. He was telling us in right in public in a very socially acceptable way, like, "Hey, I'm gonna go look for other adventures and growth, and not get stuck in the numbers. I'm going to go self initiate into a deeper mystery of life. And so if you guys want to stay with the company, you can go ahead, but that's not what I'm doing." And I knew at the time that he was like telling us something like, okay, I'm supposed to internalize what he just said. I stayed with the company and I let Amazon Santo steamroll my entire experience of what Whole Foods is. So whatever that started out with, I'll tell you personally, I can guarantee it is not the same thing right now.
Mhm.
Amazon taking over Whole Foods was the start of a war for our souls and our minds and our futures because Whole Foods lost the genetically modified organism labeling war.
Mhm.
And it wasn't over genetically modified food. That's not the language. It was a war over the phrase genetically modified organism, which includes us. This battle is right in the open. It's right in the open, and people don't have the occult lens. And so when Amazon got permission to genetically modify organisms, and we thought they were talking about food and crops, 2020 hindsight, y'all. 2020 hindsight. Whole Foods is not what it started out as. It is now what I call Amazon Santo. And it is signified by this flower, by this Procyon flower. More on that on my channel. I don't want to go on a rant. But I do want to know more about cicadas because this Amazona has primed us for a new program in a fascinating way. And you said something that really hit a chord for me that there's a play that is called the cicadas, and it has to do with the manias or the craziness, the mania.
The
Is that true?
well, there's so it appears in a few different plays, but or Greek dialogues. I'm not even really sure what the proper word is sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
Phaedrus, I think, is one of them. And so
Yep.
basically, Socrates, I think, is having a conversation maybe with Plato or one of his other students. It's a student. It's a teacher student dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
and they're talking about the different forms of mania. And so there's like erotic. There's um, like mania. There's um, there's like a melancholy, sadness kind of thing. So basically, each of these different things are muses that
Yes.
will inspire and cause song, things that would move your heart. So I guess when you think about it, like in our modern day parlance, it would be like the tropes behind movies or something like that. So a lot of
Yeah.
plays are going to have those undercurrents in them too, like a comedy or a tragedy, those sorts of elements. And so as they're talking about these different forms of, um, basically they consider mania a gift. And so if you were basically touched by the muses or Apollo, or one of these entities, you might kind of go crazy. Or,
Uh-huh.
and so you kind of get the term cicada mania from this because some of the first cicadas were people, according to this story, I think. And so they were blessed and cursed. So they were blessed to never have to eat, sleep, or drink, but cursed that they never really got to rest either until they died. So they would just sing, dance, and create, I guess, until they just died. And that was fine with them, But see, that's exactly what the cicada's life is like. So they spend their entire life, almost probably 90% of their life, underground, and then will emerge. after like the first few warm rains of a spring and early summer, you'll have the cicadas emerge. And I forgot to mention it earlier, but when you were showing the Emperor card, um, being orange, that it's in that span of time. It's in that arc, that holy arc. That's when the cicadas emerge, and then
Totally.
and so they're singing praise to God. From my perspective, they're singing praise to God, to the emperor, all summer long until his death in the fall, right? And that's when the cicadas die with the frost. So between the time of emergence and when they perish, they're copulating and singing. Now, the males sing, and then the females respond with clicks. And so I guess you could still consider that like an instrument, but I don't know which.
Yeah.
Maybe the percussion, but actually both are percussion because um, cicadas uses like a tympanic membrane to create the sound, and it's as loud as like a jet engine. If you get up close to it, the decibels that it's creating are ear piercing, so they can be quite dangerous. um, Probably especially if your pet were to get a hold of one and it's squalling, that's probably not good for their ears. But but yes, they will emerge in this time of that emperor. So if you read Proverbs 30, it's the only chapter in the Bible that's really specifically on augury, the topic of augury. And so we have an augur um, write a chapter in the Bible, which is Proverbs 30. And he's dispensing with these very cryptic phrases, and um, we're to read them and try to interpret them and understand them. But basically, what it leads up to is at the end is talking about um, like if you don't have anything good to say, you're to not speak and to cover your mouth and to not sin with your mouth and things like that. But also, um, sinning with your mouth isn't just like speaking, because one of the phrases in Proverbs mentions a woman eating apple or eating fruit and wiping her mouth thinking nobody saw her. Well, what's that imply? Maybe a house servant that's eating the king's fruit, or something like that without permission. What does it mean? Well, that's what this chapter is intended for us to read it and interpret and understand. And so it kind of taught me about augury isn't just with birds. It's with throughout this chapter. It talks about so many different animals. It's saying, "Tell me what it means to see a snake on a rock," or something like that. And
Hmm.
it even mentions the cicadas in this proverb. And it talks about how the locusts move in bands without a king. In other words, they know what their bands is a word used to imply like militarism or some type of warlike quality. And it says that cicadas or locusts move in bands, but without any um, uh, leader, meaning no head. So you could consider like all cicadas as a body, but with no head. But
Wow.
then, but then the emperor, that like your card suggests, you have your emperor though one day they have a king. So then you got all the cicadas, all the locusts being directed by their head, which they never had before. Well, the only time you really see like a body kind of symbolism is like the body of Christ with its head, and then the Antichrist body with its head with a deadly head wound. So there's a so you, I guess you could consider it like the emperor upright or reversed. If your emperor is upright, he's that God fearing, divinely chosen ruler, perhaps, or something like that. But your emperor inverted is like your Nimrod or your Pharaoh, the one that is like a left handed ruler, not the
Mm.
right handed. So if you were to look at that card again, I have mine here. It looks a little different. This is from the AE weight deck. So you'll
Mhm.
notice in both they have the Globus Cruciger and the rod. And so the right hand, um, I'm not sure which would be considered right or left here, but with the lamb sitting at his right hand, I'm going to assume the
Mhm.
globus crucifer is the right hand because the lamb sits at the right hand of the Father, right?
Yep.
So the globus crucifer could perhaps represent like that grace that can be given only by the king. What good does it? I can't pardon you from a sentence. Only the king can, right? And so,
Mhm.
but the rod, on the other hand, we read in the Bible how um, you know this character that comes later on, the wrath of the lamb vibes that we were talking about earlier. He'll break apart the nations with his rod, and the woman that has the man child, he's given a rod of iron in Revelation to break apart the nations, and so a new kingdom is formed. And so we see this character in Revelations as the locust king, um, kind of coinciding with this. So it makes me wonder if there's a relationship. Maybe he's not a good guy, but he's making the way straight for the Lord. Like he's perhaps a left-handed energy that comes and cleans the place up.
Yeah.
And then you got your body of Christ that comes in after, perhaps. So I don't know if it's the same, or because there's a lot of debate about that particular character, Abaddon, whether or not he's even good or bad. But really, he's the warden of hell. He's the one that has the key for the gate. So I, for one, wouldn't leave somebody in charge of something that important unless I trusted them. But
Right. Right.
so but anyway, we're using. I can't impose my will over God's. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but so that locust character, in some ways, there's also this element of survivalism too, because they emerge the way they do to avoid predators, and so you have your periodical cicada that emerges every year, and those are worldwide, and then you'll have some that are different years, um, some being prime, like 7 and 13 in some cases. But the ones that really are an intrigue are the 17-year locusts.
Right.
And those emerge every 17 years, but only in the eastern Midwest United States area, which I think is so
Yes.
strange because, um, of course, with your diction of areas, you've probably talked about America being Egypt, right? So,
Buddy.
where do we really hear a lot of stories about locusts in the Old Testament? Well, Egypt. It was one of the plagues. So,
Yes.
and it preceded an exodus from Egypt. And so, if we are indeed the modern day Egypt, the modern day Babylon, one of the theories is that if, maybe these cicada emergences that are seemingly spectacular, which for
Hmm.
us, because stuff like this only happens every 200 some years, so for all intents and purposes, we don't really have anything to compare it to when it occurs, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
but that, I think, is why in the book of, I think it's Joel, when he's dispensing with some prophecy about locusts, for instance, he's saying it'll be more than your father's fathers even ever saw, right? And so it wasn't until I started studying the cicada stuff that I really began to understand. I was like, Joel's probably aware of like the 17-year locusts or something like that. And
Right.
you know, they're on a totally different schedule than us, and so they're under your feet and you don't even know it. And every 200 and some years, you have this massive emergence because you got all the periodical cicadas, maybe the 13-year, the 7-year, and then the 17-year, and it's that year when they all those semicircles all coincide in a big cycle. And the
Yeah,
reason
buddy.
for that is so that they can trade their genetic material around more effectively. It's almost like all of the other cicadas serve the will of the magi cicada, even though it's not a head, it's still part of the body, but it's like the one that's really the clever one because it's hiding among all the others because it's the numbers of all the others that protect it. And so when it trades its genetic material around in that pool, it's perpetuating itself.
My gosh. Just like the matematikoi of the Pythagorean order. There's a protective sacrificial outer boundary and the Magi stays within. And that's how Pythagoras got out of the burning temple when the sullied masses were upset with these silly superstitious math worshippers. Um, that is profound. The cicada biology cycles map onto the Pythagorean mythology. And then there's that aspect of a bean field, a particular bean field that maybe the emperor cicada or the 17-year cicada does not consume. Is there a certain food that you can anticipate leaning on during a cicada uh, pestilence invasion? I wonder if there's a certain bean that you can lean on a certain year that will preserve your culture because the cicadas won't eat that crop. That's a theory. And I took some notes on these broods that are coming up during the eclipse, and they're coming up not just during the eclipse and in the location of the eclipse. It is ground zero for my territories project. It is literally the crosshairs of the nation. It's the umbilicus of the Mississippi, where there is a profile character. Here, I'll pull up the map. I want to say, everybody in the chat, keep shooting them down. Just keep on taking them out. This is the shooting gallery today. Pew, 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 pew. All y'all suckers talking smack. I got ninjas, y'all. I got ninjas. How you gonna mess with me when I got ninjas? All right. Big love, y'all. So I did. I took some notes on these cycles. I love that you mentioned that there's one type uh, that they go with no head, and that at some point it's as though they're experiencing the head for the first time, a unity or a harmony, a rare unity or harmony. That reminds me of many people's theories about when you take mushrooms, you're communing, you're having a soul meld with this spirit of the mushroom. It's as though the mushroom has never had a heart before. And so it gets in your heart chariot and it starts flipping switches and seeing what this baby can do, riding down the street in his heart for the first time. That's how I describe mushrooms. Uh, but I took some notes. Oh,
Right,
so the
right with that.
headless ones. What? Yeah, I mean, just a thought. So for one, I'll say Azafel is kind of a it's a Nietzschean cult, but it's not. You can't blame Nietzsche for what those guys are up to because they threw in Marquis de Sade, they threw in Bataille, and you get this weird hybrid amalgam interest group of real dark mentality. So their icon is Azafel. It means no head. It's the headless one, and this kind of stuff gives Nietzsche a real bad reputation. But that came to mind when you mentioned that.
Yeah,
Um,
and it reminds me of Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman too.
oh my gosh, who carries around the orange? There's the orange with the pumpkin again. The pumpkin in his lap,
Oh
like the
yeah, exactly. Which that's actually an Irish story, and I
huh.
think yeah, it also relates to stories about Jack, um, like Jack and the Beanstalk or Jack O' Lantern, and so I think it was originally like a turnip head, or not a
Uh-huh.
turnip head, but a turnip bulb that was carved out and an ember was put in it. But the ember, I think, came from the devil. Um, and so it's like when he tricked the devil, he was, I got the devil threw an ember at him or gave him an ember in one way or another. But it reminds me of the story of Baba Yaga, where
Mm.
if somebody were to send Baba Yaga after let's say for instance that somebody, a practitioner, sent Baba Yaga after a Christian, and she goes there and they're covered in the blood of the lamb, and she's like, oh yeah, and she goes back to the person that sent her and is like, guess what, they're covered, buddy, you're mine now. And but before she would depart from that person though, she gives them a lantern. Well, what is that? That's very much like that ember then, huh? So it makes me wonder if that's like, if that ember and that lantern aren't something like the pineal gland, the lamp in your head, so to speak. And so Yeah, I know that Baba Yaga is a little bit of a scary character to bring up, but so is
Yeah.
the Headless Horseman. Um, but yeah, so it makes me wonder, like, it's like this left hand, right hand kind of thing. Well, the right hand is that lamb, or that grace. Like, if you're gonna, if somebody were to send that entity or angel after somebody, and they're being asked to do something that's against their ability or orders or the will, then they will be punished, even tenfold, it says in some cases. So I think that's why those stories for me are so interesting, because they're kind of bumping up against stuff that you'll run up against in other cultures too. And I think there's probably a thread that goes all the way through it. But the headless automaton uh, really kind of makes me think of the golem too, if you really think about it,
Yep,
because
totally.
the life, the consciousness is in the head, right? And so um, I think in a lot of cases, most people would be headless when they're just going about their lives and not being conscious, right? So
Yeah.
getting that head put on you, now you have a higher functioning, and
Um,
sometimes you can find pictures of like giants and creatures of olden days that were like giants with faces in their chests. They didn't have
mhm.
heads. The head was
Yeah.
their torso. So kind of makes me
You
think of
know,
those creatures too.
yeah. One aspect of this Procyon flower, it has a great deal to do with Rocket, the character from the Guardians of the Galaxy. A Procyon is a scientific name for raccoon. And so this is like a nebulous word. It's a super nebulous word that they pulled out of their prison wallet. But it relates to the raccoon, relates to so many things. Um, Even your personhood. Your personhood is an animus, that you keep in your wallet. Your wallet is, and this is why Rocket is obsessed with uh, 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 prosthetic limbs. Procyon is in the word prosthetic limb. Well, funny enough, your wallet is the prosthesis. It's actually your little homunculus self, and you go through a birthing ritual and expose your most infantile desires when you hand that over to the cops. And he's like, "Is this you?" And you're a dumbass because you said, "Yeah, that's me." Nope, that belongs to the state. I am me. I am me. Don't be putting nothing up my procyon. So yeah, this is all the magic of sovereignty here. But the Procyon and the raccoon is fascinating, and I just want to mention that social engineers they use this word racket as a ratchet, and they are ratcheting and priming us in fascinating ways to have a new prosthetic limb, and that is your phone. So what
Yeah.
used to be your wallet stuck up your ass, they are gearing you up. Amazon Santo Prime will put that phone in your ass and you will like it. That's what the message is here. Um, but then I wanted to weave on the Clockwork Orange in the fact that I believe that they know that these manias come out at the heat of the summer. It's going to be a wild ride this year, folks. And I just want to really buzz on um, the Clockwork Orange and the MK Ultra of turning this color into a symbol of Orange Man Bad. And even going back to SOL, that is Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, dude.
Silence Silence of the Lambs had the freaking cicadas baked into the cover art, right? So these reinforced archetypes have been fueled and fostered and added, had more fuel and more gasoline and even napalm and probably a little bit of mustard powder uh, seeded into our consciousness. And then the language and the narrative that's going to go for months, for the next bunch of months, is going to have the word emergent. When they talk
Hmm.
about these cicadas, they use the word emerging and they use the word broods. And what have so many people been doing? We've been brooding over how the emergency powers that they gave themselves. So all the resentment is latently baked into the language of what people are going to be talking about. And this is fascinating too. You're not supposed to talk about politics or religion when you're with your, at family gatherings, but you better believe you talk about weather, and you better believe you're going to be talking about these cicadas. And every word, every other word that has anything to do with the weather of the cicadas is emergent, it's brooding, it's embedding. These bugs have been embedded. So I on my channel, I was talking last week about how they're going to subtle. It's going to be subtle. They're not going to tell you this is magic. We're just talking science. We're just talking science. And tell me your source. What's your source? Or tell me your source on your science. I thought it was going to be aimed at the subconscious. And just this week, an article came out in the New York Times that was total overkill. The whole thing was assigning pestilent animals and vermin and insect bug people, labeling the political landscape with these really disgusting descriptions of these natural elements that we can look forward to over the next year. And it blows my mind that I was wrong to say they're going to be subtle. They're going to be subtly talking about cicadas. This headline that came out was so hubristic and explosive and incendiary. I don't even think it was written by a human. Can't believe the yellow journalism got through the radar and went all in one shot. It was so heavy-handed. I almost suspect that they dropped all the Dresden bombs in one day, and they don't even have to talk about it again. They don't have to. It doesn't have to be in the headlines. They can ignore it now because this article was so gross. It was so gross. So yeah, that's kind of bringing some of what I thought I was maybe seeing on the horizon, and then they just hit us with this article about it had bugs and wasps and vermin um, and then they started actually giving animal associations with different world leaders. Like Bibi Netanyahu is a lemur and Trump is a lion. Well, that actually maps out to the striped animal in the seventh spot. Putin is a seven. Trump is an eight. Well, there's this. This is the Ghislaine Maxwell up here. So yeah, some of the language in that article was like, damn, they just went balls to the wall early in the season. So maybe they don't have to say anything. We'll pick it up and carry the torch going forward. But tell me if any of this rings a bell, Joshua, because
Well, yeah, I was actually wanting to comment on something.
please,
So,
please do.
um, you're talking about the bugs and the bug people, and you mentioned before on our message on Telegram about the Bronze Age warring with the bug people, and it just kind of made me wonder because what are they trying to get us to eat right now? You will eat the bugs. So, I think there might be something to that. Of
Yes.
course, we're not really supposed to eat the bugs because the bugs contain a lot of chitin in some cases that are really quite inflammatory for our gut. And so I don't think it's going to pan out so well, even from a business perspective. But in the Bible, however, in the Old Testament, there were several types of locusts that were kosher to eat. So some of them are okay to eat, while some are not. And there were, I think, three different types of locusts in the desert that they were allowed to eat. But it makes me wonder why some are okay and others are not. And I think it might be because a lot of insects contain parasites too. Um, so you got to wonder sometimes when you see a bug, is it doing its will or the will of the parasite? And
Mm.
when you meet somebody on the street, you kind of ask yourself the same question: Are they doing their own will, or are they doing the will of the parasites that are in them? So, I've kind of been getting a little more aware of parasites here lately, and I bought some diatomaceous earth to start
Mm.
taking because you want to kill bugs, diatomaceous earth that'll take care of parasites. It'll take care of bugs. It's very versatile. Um, but one other thing I wanted to mention was the emergency. We're gonna see a lot of emergencies. I think you're right, and it's through these emergencies that they take extra powers and control. And one of those things is going to be that digital ID. And I think that, or Whole Foods started doing that junk, didn't they? Where you can pay like with your palm or
Mhm.
whatever. And that's all leading into the mark of the beast that you can read about in Revelation chapter 13. Um, and so the head of this locust body, if he is indeed the left hand of God, and he and his army are given orders that they cannot harm any person with the seal of God on them, no, not any green thing or tree or anybody with the seal of God. Well, if everybody that takes that mark, they're not, that's not the seal of God. So the locust king that comes will be warring with those people, I think. So I wouldn't really look at the bug people as a bad thing.
Mhm.
They're just following orders. If you don't have that vaccine in you or that chip in you, don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. Things are gonna get themselves sorted out soon enough, I think. But
Yeah.
anyway, as far as
Yeah.
our country is concerned, with this X symbolism, you kind of made a reference to earlier, we're going to have the eclipse pass over the United States again, like it did in 2017. And so we're going to be 7 years now from the fulfillment of Revelation 12, 1 through 7. The woman clothed in the sun, Virgo, with the moon at her feet, crowned with 12 stars, travailing in birth. Well, that's when you
Yes.
had Jupiter exit Virgo after being in Virgo for 9 months, exiting through the
Right.
legs. And that dragon being Saturn, you don't normally see Saturn brought up in this, but it talks about the dragon. That's why I included verse 7, because it talks about the dragon wanting to consume the child. Well, most people stop at the birth of the Jupiter king planet, but if we go a little bit beyond that, you can see on the horizon that day, Saturn was down there too. And
Right.
so I think that, and since then, Saturn's been following Jupiter through the sky. So over the course of the 7 years leading up to this next eclipse we're about to have, we've been seeing the dragon chase the man child across the sky. Um, and so that man child also represents the collective bodies, right? You got the body of Christ, the body of maybe the non-believers, and so I think that's something to kind of take into account as well. But if we look at what the X is in tarot, that's the Wheel of Fortune, and the Wheel of Fortune is actually the key of the tarot. So if you understand the Wheel of Fortune card, you can understand tarot on an entirely another level because it tells you how to read the tarot. And so you'll notice you got some Hebrew letters on there, and it's actually the name for God. That's Yod He Vav He. And then tarot, every other letter is a Hebrew letter for the name of God, and then every other letter is an English letter that spells tarot. Well, you can play around with the word tarot and make different words like Sator, um, so on and so forth.
Rotas.
Rotos, Rotar.
Mhm.
And so, just like you were playing around with Socrates' name earlier, I would say they probably did choose names that had multiple meanings, depending on, like, if you were an initiate, you knew, oh, okay, your hidden name's actually this anagram, you know.
Totally.
Um,
Yep.
but so,
Socrates also another anagram, and it's close enough. I think it's just a couple numbers off, but it's octave. He's the seventh seat, but the seven actually isn't what is implicit in the secret of the octave. So the jump from the seven to the eight is understanding the music of the octave, but that is also just subtly intrinsic to his Socrates name as well. It's implied between the lines yet again.
yeah, man, a lot of things are. And the Twilight language is all about reading between the lines. By the way, my phone's on 3%, so that's why I had to turn my camera off. So I'm gonna share as much as I can before it goes dead.
Okay.
But the Wheel of Fortune card with the X, I think, is something that as we approach April 8th, my birthday's April 6th, by the way, and I got to go to Tennessee the first time to be in the path of the eclipse. That was
Whoa.
August 21st, 2017. And then
Whoa.
33 days later, is when the Revelation 12:1 sign was fulfilled in the night sky. And then
Wow.
we're now at 7 years past. And so for my birthday, April 6th, I'm going to go um, see the eclipse on the 8th down.
Oh man, we should hang out.
Are you in Missouri?
No, but let's hang out. I'll get there. I'll find a
You
way, buddy.
should.
I
So,
got to tell you, you keep saying the 7 years since, and I just want to point out the fourth prime number. This is card number 4. The fourth prime number is the number 7. So the
oh,
connect, so the connection between 4 and 7 and Cheney is all about the 47. It's brought out by the primes. When you
well, I
see
think one thing's for sure, they are definitely waiting on their king to show up. So I think I think that they're
yes,
expecting it. And
and there's an emperor cicada too, and it's like the biggest, most beautiful one. It's the only one I think is beautiful. It's really
uh,
something to
a
marvel at.
minor correction there. It's the pharaoh cicada, I think you're
Oh,
thinking of. And maybe
i-
there's
is
both.
the
Could
is
be
the
both.
pharaoh? Does the pharaoh have a blue band
I think it's
on his?
got like what, a M on its forehead or something like that.
They might be. We might have different ones. I did know there was
There
a
could be
pharaoh.
two. Yeah, there could
Yeah,
be a pharaoh and an
yeah,
emperor both. But I know for sure the magi cicada a lot of times is a pharaoh cicada, which again references back to this thought of America being Egypt, right?
yeah.
Um, but one more thing to add about the Wheel of Fortune is if you look at, so you got Yod He Vav He as the four-letter tetragrammaton, but then you got your four fixed signs in each corner of the card too, and they
On
each
most
have a,
decks, yeah.
oh, it's got it too. Okay, and so those are open books with the word in it. So if
Yes.
you you can map the entire Hebrew alphabet on the Sephirot tree, which also shows the different paths. So you can map the major arcana on the Sephirot tree along with the Hebrew alphabet, and so that is the key of the tarot. So the Wheel of
Yes.
Fortune is very important. So I think as we approach that date coming up, we should maybe look at this because who else is on this card? You got a serpent and a devil, and then at the top you got a pharaonic looking sphinx. He's got like a headdress on with a sword.
R- riddle time. It's riddle time.
Well, and here, as far as riddles are concerned, so I can't remember the exact verse for this one, but the Antichrist, quote unquote, or is a fierce king, a king of fierce countenance that stands up, who is able to understand dark riddles. So he'll
Mm, mm,
have
mm,
the ability to understand things that other people don't.
mm, mm, mm. I tell you what. Okay, I'm going to give up some of my dark riddles. The four books in the four corners is this is revealing the tetrabiblos of Ptolemy. Ptolemy is Typhon. The story of Typhon monotheizing Greece, scaring all the gods into hiding in Egypt. They had to put on masks and hide in Egypt because Typhon was storming across the landscape.
Yeah,
That that is Ptolemaic dynasty monotheizing all the books and all the writing. I think it signifies the burning of Alexandria and a bottleneck of information. The battle between Typhon and Zeus is fascinating, but I can just give everybody all the gravy without doing any work. The battle between Typhon and Zeus is the battle between monotheism and polytheism. And there was a time when polytheism had to be disseminated into the agricultural field workers. And it was simplified, but the mysteries of it unpacked, they became immortal. And now we can go back and unpack the Greek myths. And that is all bottlenecked in the battle between Typhon and Zeus.
may
And
I
that,
mention one thing? Because I probably will be losing battery here in a moment. So
well,
if you,
last
yeah,
point
sure.
is Ptolemy gave birth to Cleopatra. So Ptolemy was when the fixed signs were all the royal stars were in cardinal positions, and then that conflagration, the Ptolemies handed the torch to Cleopatra, and they all went to fixed positions. And
Mm.
now we're rolling into a new age where the torch has to be passed to a new amalgam, a new Sphinx riddle is upon us. That's a summary. All right, fire away.
And they were the royalty, so they were in charge of the highest science. Um, so if you go to the chariot card, you'll see that that's a seated, well, possibly just from the torso up, but rooted in the cube. But the head of that figure is touching a starry sky, just like Typhon. Typhon was said to have been a creature so giant and crazy big that its head brushed heaven. Um, and so it was a real threat to the Olympians because he could get to them, right? So that's why Zeus kind of went after him, and they fought. And um, I think he was disabled in some way too, like got separated from his lightning bolts or something. And then I can't remember who it was that helped him.
Typhon he turned his back because he didn't see the gods at first, and he started lumbering away. And while his back was turned, Zeus pops out of his disguise and hits him with the Aegis in the shoulder. But then Typhon picks up the Aegis and turns on Zeus and defeats Zeus, removes his 10 Dans, and moves north. 10
Yeah,
Dans moved north. 10 tribes of Dan moved north. Wrapped him in a bear skin. That's Ursa Majora pointing to the north, and the 10 tribes of Dan going north, which actually has an echo in the slaves following the pole star to the promised land also. The tribes of Dan going north. Did I lose you? Oh, I talked too much. I think I lost Joshua LaBranch. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Josh LaBranch. I totally talked his battery out. Maybe he'll pop back in. I think I heard it go zit. Yep, he got zapped. Damn, I talked too much. Whoo, ladies and gentlemen. Slick Dissident's brain can't take much more. That was so much fun. I'm going to give him time to come back in. Yeah. You know, if maybe he'll just plug in his battery and get like 2% and come back in just a minute. Oh, I shouldn't have talked so much, but oh, I loved that. I love that. Everybody, thank you so much for joining. Um, this is a monumental day for me. You know, for the record, today is Bob Marley's birthday. Give thanks and praise. Very, very significant uh, individual. That rebel spirit, that blessed, blessed rebel spirit. Give thanks, Bob. 808 is a BOB. 88 constellations in the Tetrabiblos of Ptolemy. My favorite, well, I can't say it's my favorite. My coveted uh, astronomy book is Urania's Mirror. I'm going to get my hands on a copy of Urania's Mirror. I would love to have the Tetrabiblos of Ptolemy and Urania's Mirror side by side, like the Rider-Waite-Smith deck versus the Thoth deck, and see what kind of off-gassing happens when I alchemically compare notes there. Big bless to Bob, man. Big bless to Bob. They're making a movie. Finally, it's about time. They probably won't. They probably can't rise to the occasion, but I'm glad they're trying. I'm glad somebody's trying. But yeah, there's a Bob Marley movie coming out. Shoot, they probably there he is. Thanks again for hosting me, buddy. You the man, Joshua. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do a part 2 sometime soon. We'll work it out, man, because that was not enough. Let's do it again. And I'll see you in Missouri, bro. I'll see you in Missouri. We'll work that out. Coming together in the meat space to stare into the abyss and enjoy its return gaze. That's a plan. Just a few notes. Joshua, I see you in the chat still. That's great. So you can actually give, we can still play. We could still play. I'm going to read some of the notes on the cicada cycles that I took. There are 2 broods popping up this year, and it is a rare occasion, like Joshua mentioned, that these 2 broods, they don't syncopate. They haven't syncopated for what I understand 221 years. It's an interesting number. But one brood is a 13-year brood. 13 is the sixth prime. The other brood that syncopates to them is a 17-year typology, and that is the seventh prime. So we have the sixth prime and the seventh prime. In between my sixth and my seventh seat, I have a gadfly. I have the mosquito, is the double card over here. This is a mosquito. It's not a cicada, but it is in the position between the sixth and the seventh. And Polymathen was mentioning earlier on our waves around the cicada, he was talking about Juno, the wife of Jupiter, I believe. And isn't it interesting that it is between the 6 and the 7, prime number 6, prime number 7, the 13-year and the 17-year, that there is a gadfly sitting there, bridging the 6 to the 7 gap. This card is Capricornian, but it's 15, which sums up to a number 6. It gives it the position in the loyalist seat. So I just wanted to mention Polymath's weave on Juno in this correspondence, this offset between the 6th prime and the 7th prime, 13-year and the 17-year cicadas. Also, Polymathing mentioned that the old name of Amazon was Kadabra. Kadabra, I think, might be on this up here. I think it says abracadabra, but it's like abrahadabra with an H. Well, funny enough, Abraham had a bra. Abraham had a bra. That's a nod to the bosom of Abraham. That's a nod to the OG idea of a purgatory. We're going to keep your ancestors on hold in this waiting room, and if you act up, we might send a bad report card to the waiting room. So yeah, Abraham had a bra is a purgatory nod, and if you keep people in purgatory until the whatever, then you can hold leverage over their reputation. You don't even have to hostage the actual person. You can just threaten to talk bad about them. Pretty fascinating. Hold on, I'm going to check my notes because we nailed the clockwork orange of this programming. I'm gonna pontificate a little bit. Oh, here he is. Yes. Abracadabra is on the chariot card. Translate to I speak as I create, like the tarot. So to speak royal alchemy of the heavens. Yeah, man. Lumashi is the abracadabra. See John McHugh for more on what Lumashi means. Most fascinating potentials there. So the clockwork orange, the orange man bad, the even the idea. Okay, so we have a great amount of words that have dread. 100, one hand dread. The dreading of what is read is also intrinsic to our language. As a redhead myself, a tall redhead, I can attest to a great amount of torment in my life because of my genetics. And that is the fact that when I go into the dentist's office, for most of my life, I've spoked wheels and the spoken word. Yeah, I mean, good call. As a redhead, when I go into the dentist, all their attempts at anesthetizing me, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I have felt every single drill. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. I have had really good dentists give me the extra boost a couple times, but generally, I feel all of my dental work because there's not a lobby for the redheads to go and convince the anesthesiologists that it's not a one-off occasion, that it's not anecdotal, that the pain that the redhead suffers in anesthesia is not anecdotal. It's just a matter of they don't have a lobbying group who's gone out to the anesthesiologist and be like, yo, you're hurting these people. You think they're like everybody else. Well, that one size fits all mentality is a huge problem. It's a huge problem. I think we all know what I'm getting at, and it expands out to a great many other things in the industry of remedy that they want a one size fits all. And us redheads, we're going to continue to be a problem. I promise. I promise. So yeah, the targeting of the redheads, it's in our language. It's expected. It's anticipated. I think it's industrialized. Um, but yeah, those anesthesiologists, they don't give a fuck. Trust me, I talk to them. They think that's anecdotal. I had to tell them, in law, anecdotal, whatever that word means to you in law, that's called firsthand perfected knowledge. Firsthand perfected knowledge. Anecdotal. Whatever serves the industry, right? Whatever serves the industry. But yeah, let me buzz a few thoughts around the cicada stuff. This is so funny. Oh, Josh, hold on. I'm not paying attention to the comments, so I think I missed a bunch of gravy. Carrying spoken word of the emperor, right? And he has there's also like he's the axial center, right? He has that rod that is the axial center. And notice the corresponding angle of his staff and the lamb's staff. I'm not sure, but that's probably a 23.4 axial tilt. The axial tilt, the axial rod of a cart that makes the wheels turn. So yeah, that central. Oh, LaBranch. Okay, LaBranch. I got something. Some of the best languages that are polyglottal are royal languages. And one example is like in Spain, they had a king who had a lisp. And so because he had a lisp, they actually had to inseminate that lisp onto the masses. Well, funny, and then the same thing with Welsh. The Welsh language is like lisp-tastic. And there are other examples of this, but these high-born languages, these classist languages that have a lisp, they're actually rounding out the sounds, and it gives them purchase in other tongues. And so having these weird wishy-washy king speak that is not exactly what all the commoners speak, well, the strangest way I see that the king's tongue, by softening its edges, it gains access to other languages as well. And so there's more to that. But Cleopatra and all the languages she spoke, that means she had the Metatron. She had the central hub of the wheel. Yeah, pretty fascinating. Okay. There's a joke out there. Hold on, I got to build up for this one. I was telling LaBranch about Bronze Age mindset. Bronze Age mindset is very much the Incredible Hulk, sublimated out of Bam Bam from childhood, and then grew up to become Bruce Banner. And you wouldn't like him when he's mad because he sheds articles and dons a false persona and becomes a caveman. The Bronze Age mindset, he doesn't use articles. He says words with less. He says more with less. But he's incredibly high-minded. For speaking like a child to the lowest common denominator, having shed all the articles, he has extremely high ideals, dangerously high ideals. This is all Michael Aquino. This is all Michael Aquino handicraft. And the cover of Bronze Age Mindset book is this fucking lust card that is also on the cover of Iceberg Slim's Pimp. Iceberg Slim is a brown sage. And the Bronze Age mindset is a regurgitation of Iceberg Slim's pimping model. And in this sublimated sleeper cell technology of the Bronze Age mindset that Michael Aquino unleashed onto the masses to pimp us all out, they have a target demographic or a target mentality that is the problem with the world. And the problem in the world for them is the bug men. The bug men are the problem. And so, what I'm fascinated about is knowing through studying Aristophanes, the playwright of comedy, I have learned about the wasps and how, if you go and study the wasps like I did, you will learn that it is the origin of the word buzzwords. In that play, they were actually taking the chorus, which is kind of the internal monologue of the onlookers. They had inseminated the chorus into the audience and were putting words in the audience's mind that they would associate with their collective emotional experience of the theater. But those words were also landmines in their daily life when they go out into the, into uh, the demos, into the city. The words from the play were actually aligned to steer their decision making in their daily life in the city. And this is what the DT has become today. So many people knew what button to push, what who to vote for, as long as it wasn't this one. And now I want everybody to think about the term flyover states. All of the flyover states, those insignificant labor class, they're not even smart enough to know where these insults are coming from because the buzzwords are flying over their head. And when they hear this orange man's name, they get all geared up and they get all sublimated, they get all pumped, uh, and then they're ready for the horn. So yeah, the programming of the buzzwords is so profound. And of course, what is hero tremp? HEEROTREMP, hero tremp. He is a wasp, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. He's a wasp. So funny enough, this was a wasp a couple weeks ago for me, very powerfully because Aristophanes is speaker number four card is the comedy and all the works of the comedians comes into the wasp. Well, guess what? There is a specific wasp that attacks each specific type of cicada. So the specific fig requires a specific wasp to inseminate the fig. The specific wasp has a specific cicada that it attacks as well. All of the specificity of it all is so profound and vast. It's a whole scientific language that is preserved with Greek roots in that language. But yeah, this is quite profound to me. And so some of the jokes that we've been preserving for so long come into fascinating context around the cicada spell that's about to unhatch on everybody. And one of my favorite jokes is, yeah, everybody's a feminist until there's a spider in the room. Until there's a spider in the room, everybody's a feminist. That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, I'm pretty sure that kind of thing is about to pop up. It's about to pop up with the heat of the summer that they have lined up for us. So yeah, everybody's a feminist until there's a spider. The spider is actually this adjustment card, which is right next to bam, 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 bam. Bronze Age mindset, BAM, bam, bam. Incredible Hulk. Really fascinating. Uh, Trapdoor spider. Trapdoor spider was in that New York Times article. Turns out Socrates, if you look close, it is when he's drinking the hemlock scene, his toes are pointing down very subtly. I forget who painted that painting. If anybody knows, throw it in the chat. But his toes are pointing at a trapdoor. Socrates' foot is on a little bit of a stool or a platform, very much like this platform. But under the platform in the painting, there's a trapdoor. It's a bit telling you that theater, it's all theater. This is all theater. It's all for the sake of the show. Uh, and isn't it funny how sublimated trapdoors were in Scooby Doo? We always knew where the trapdoors were because the wall was a slightly different color. And then we got the gratification of anticipating that part of the wall, look out, Scoob, the door is going to flow. And then the door opens up because they changed the color slightly. And they trained us to pick up on these cues. So Yeah, sometimes the anamnesis of our experience is just cultural seeding. All right. Amazon Santo, those fuckers. What do I got here? Oh, Optimus Prime. I missed that. Optimus Prime. Uh, Chariot card. Chariot card. Right now, we're witnessing the Great Honkening 3.0. It may be a big nothing burger, hopefully. But with the Great Honkening in Ottawa, with all the trucker event, kicked off on February 2nd, which is a 180-degree alignment from Ottawa down to Texas Star Card. Texas is Star Card Tower Card. Up in Ottawa is the Chariot Card of Detroit, Michigan, Indianapolis 500, and even Ottawa itself is a machine hub of building vehicles and cars. So we're there again, but we're on the 180 relationship, where on the other end of the same cord, going from Chariot of Michigan, crab. Michigan is a crab's claw. It's also a charioteer needs gloves to hold on to the tethers of the chariot. So that would be the the driver's gloves give him command over. It's a gauntlet. It's also a gauntlet, which in Italian, a monopoly is called a gauntlet. So Thanos Fauci comes to mind, right? Convoy called themselves the Army of God. That is something. Optimus Prime. That's another thing about Optimus. Socrates is Mr. God of science, and scientific optimism has gone gluttonous. And so there is an aspect of the how, this is how hope is actually dangerous. Optimism and hope are in a bind, in a pinch, when it really boils down to an emergent situation. Faith wins. Faith wins. Hope is great. Optimism, it's all good. Faith wins, y'all. It wins. And it's good to have practice with summoning your faith. You don't want to be in the heat of the battle and not know what the magic words are. 111. Elaborate psyops for sure. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so then I'm just going to kind of mark the broods. And I think I just want to put these, the different types of broods also have their own history. So these bugs are bringing echoes from the essence of their chronology up into on offer for the minds of those to see. uh, so there's a 17-year and a 13-year. There's the seventh prime number and the sixth prime number. And they're meeting, they're syncopating this year for the first time. Thanks everybody for shooting all the swatting all the flies for me. So the 13-year brood that is popping up, their brood number is 19. The brood number is very confusing. It's very confusing, seemingly by design. But the 13-year brood that's going to pop up this year is called brood number 19, and it has its own history, its own region, its own flavor, its own song, totally its own personality. And everything about learning these cicada behaviors is actually a study in nuance. We're finding how the differences are important. A lot of people are out there like, who cares? It's just cicadas. There's cicadas here, cicadas, two different cicadas. Well, when you look into the differences and you bounce them off of each other, a great amount of learning comes from that. So the brood number 19, it has a southern orientation. There other names for this group of cicadas is the Great Southern Brood. This resonates with Civil War animosity. I lived in South for a couple years, and I happen to agree with a great many things that people down there still require uh, to maintain their integrity after what happened in their past, and in fact, the multi generational insults that people are still caught up on. People are still waiting for reinforcements with whatever. So I prefer to call it the War of Northern Aggression because I know that war is never civil, and I know that propagating that term onto people gave them the cognitive dissident double bind to self-deprecate with their own words. When you say civil war, you're actually speaking ignorance. You're speaking ignorance. So I go with the war's northern aggression because that's what happened. And snowbirds got their ass kicked. Snowbirds got their ass kicked. They didn't win that war. They just had more bodies to throw at it because of the famines, because of the orphan trains. They just had more bodies to throw on. Grant, grant me that. All right. Talking some mania, bro. You talking some crazy mania. Hey, thanks, Rachel. Um, the other brood, so the 13-year brood has a southern history. That's profound. Because a lot of people think that those southerners are still brooding over it. Hmm. 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 I'm not a southerner, but I do love them. I love the South. I love the South so much. Mm, I love the South so much. Uh, yeah, agriculture, you know, doesn't get more righteous. Uh, so the other brood happens to have a northern orientation. Hmm. The 17-year brood is brood number 13. That's where the confusion kicks in because it's a 17-year brood that is called number 13. And its opposition this year is the brood number 19, and they have a 13-year cycle. So the confusion is built into it. It's like, I thought you said west. I thought we were going west. Why didn't you go west, man? West side. So there is a north and a south. And then the interesting thing about brood number 13, that is the 17-year brood, is that they are focused in northern Illinois. And Illinois in reverse is Hill of Zion. It's the Hill of Zion. Illinois, very crucial magnetic anomaly down there in the mountains in southern Illinois, where this ground zero for this great eclipse is going to take place. Uh, I don't presume to prophesize, but I do know my history. And the last time something like this with this eclipse X marks the spot, we had quakes and reverberations for years to come afterwards. So yeah, we should learn from our history. And I'm not claiming to predict future outcomes, but I'm definitely going to come out to play for this party. I'm definitely going to come out to play for this party. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hooking up with LaBranch and coordinating some real life meetups and some history altering meeting of the minds, some coming together of some of the greatest uh, friends that I've ever grown to know and appreciate. So yeah, look forward to more shows. I know LaBranch would say yes. I'm going to speak for you, buddy. Yeah, we'll have LaBranch back on the Slick Dissident. We'll get more weaves on the prime numbers and the cicadas and the cicada code. I still have a story that I'm gonna keep in my pocket for now. We'll break it out next time LaBranch is on the air, because part of the whole whatever with the CIA recruiting program that was the Cicada 3301. Uh, let me say this: cicada is an anagram for CAD, CIA. CAD is a person who hangs around universities, who just loves to be in the culture of academia, who basically somebody who's stuck in college for life, even though they might have graduated, but they don't move away and they're somehow they work at the university or can never get out of it. That's like a CAD. They hang around academia and because they're culturally attached to it. CIA. That's how the SOS was started. So yeah, some of those old heads are probably nodding and winking to each other in the inside circles of the Cicada 3301 mystery, whatever that was, and will be. Can you say spooky pills? It would really make my day. Oh, Pookie. Pookie, there you go. See you later. Yeah. Was this fun? Did we have lots of pestilence in the chat? Is that what's up? Is that what's up? All kinds of little weird pests. I'm going to go through and if you guys have any questions or comments that I missed, in fact, all of your comments that I missed, please repost them if you care to, because I definitely did not see a lot of what was said here. Sherry, you've been working hard. Rachel, you've been working hard. All my polymathing, all my ninjas, I love you so much. Thank you so much for keeping the space sanctified. I so appreciate that. The more beautiful we are, the more the vampires got to come out and try to get some. And that's all good. It's all good. I got plenty to give. Come get me. Come get me. Buggers. All right. Yeah. Fire off any questions. We're going to wrap it out. Oh, look, J-Lo's in the house. Love you, J-Lo. Think about you a lot. Think about you a lot. J-Lo, you're still in New York, right? Right, sister? You up there in New York? And not far from my Mestre's stomping grounds, where he gets down in out there in Harlem. Making dinner. Big love, Green Eyed Crow. Crystal 51. Hey, what's up, Crystal 51? Yeah, well, you can go back. I think heads up, folks. Over on Sick Dissident channel, check in my community tab. I've posted some of the revelations and imagery around the scratchy stick that is called the Heckle Heckle in the Bateria, in the band of the Capoeira Symposium. And this Heckle Heckle, it's going to inform this cicada correspondences going forward. So I just wanted to let folks know, hey, big up, Peter Shell. Much respect, my friend. Much respect. In the comments or in the community tab, you'll see some of my art. And that'll kind of be maybe in the future, if I have certain graphics that I want people to look at during a live, I might post them in advance over in that community tab. And then also my live feeds are under the live tab. I've seen in other channels, they actually can segregate their lives and their normal videos from their lives, but I'm just going to let my lives be in the live tab. I'm not sure how to move those things around yet. Okay, let me see if I missed any. Big up, buddy. Big up. Let's see. Catherine, hello, welcome. Prince, hi, I love you too, buddy. Prince Shrekington the Third. Great name. Holy Aeon card, buddy. Buddy, it's a great name. Any thoughts on what the individuals that cracked the cicada were led on to do and what those people are actually doing today? Let me say this. The word love and the word code have the same value in ordinal reduced. LOVE is 3645. Some find that close enough to the annual cycles, 364.5, but also 36 is a cycle. 45 is the Pythia. And also when you add 3645, when you add it up, No, when you don't reduce it, when you do ordinal, not reduced, just ordinal numerology, I'll just say it. Uh, 12, 15, 22, 5. You add that up and you get 45. So it's a love circle and the 45 in the middle. The Pythias is the 45 down here. But the code is the same thing. Code is 3, 6, 4, 5. Love and code are the same thing. This can be insidious if you want it to. This can be enlightening if you want it to. And so for them to snatch up the real code heads and recruit them early on tells me that love is the answer. Tells me love is the answer. They snatched up all the code makers, all these code makers. They ain't going to get all the love makers. They never can, they never will. So yeah, that's kind of my read on why the cicada 3301 thing, and it becomes a legacy. That's another thing. So the guys who made it into the first harvest, they informed the second harvest. And then that second harvest went even more covert, and things are well underground and still moving and rippling on their own cicada call pattern. So they're passing torches all over the place. And then this is probably they're probably working for the accelerationists who have been so uh, generous with developing rabbit warrens for us to research and chase our tail down. Find it fascinating that the term rabbit hole has lost its medicine. It's lost its potency. And anymore, I just don't even like admitting that I'm in any rabbit holes. I think it's time to get out and chase tail. Any thoughts on? Yep. Any other questions? I'm about to call it, y'all. Operating from the position of love is key in these otherwise confusing and fearful times. That's what's up, Walter Tobin. Big up, buddy. You're right. Gotta have faith. Most deaf. Nice. Love is always the answer. You guys already know this. See, I'm preaching to the choir. I ain't even preaching. I'm singing with the choir, y'all. Um, hello, Ava. Hello, hello. Right. Give thanks and praise, everybody. So glad you came and joined me. Thank you for your questions and your feedback and your kung fu in the chat. I know, tuck your thumbs with the kung fu stance. I know there's a lot of work. You guys giving me your time, attention, and consideration. I really appreciate all of that. Yeah, this was a wild ride. This is a wild, wild ride. Let me see what if there was anything else. Hoots and bids. No, I think that's everything I cared to say. Yeah, I guess I'll end off on reminding folks that we have adjusted the card that I had associated with the medium beer and bow is now the hermit card because of her being in the middle. This is the measured one. She is measuring. She's using temperance to measure out the ingredients, which is so very true to the dynamics of this particular form of beer and bow. So I'm just making a minor adjustment in my bateria, in the order and arrangement of the instruments, and I just want to put the middle beer and bow in the hands of this observer with the shadow of greed or jealousy, and yeah, put her in this middle spot, playing a very appropriate instrument. Oh, but you know, I also should say, if I give this a beer and bow, how can I claim that it is also the drum? I'm not letting go to the drum aspect. I think the drum still has a strong hold to the nature of this card because I know that this is the mesa or the uh, Our altar is the table constellation. It's the furnace, at the extreme south, but it has to be a flat surface. So I think that this Birembao will be playing and focusing on the Atabaki drum, the big mama drum. And I think that sometimes the passing of little symbols like these curly ears are actually telling us that she has a fancy. She is fancying uh, other instruments around the symposium. So yeah, that's kind of part of what I'm tuning into, the fact that her ears tune in very heavily to the Gunga Biramba over here, because the chariot has the same little conch, shows us noise. The conch shows noise. This conch shows us the noise that these two are listening to each other very closely, which is true to the art of capoeira bataria in generating the ritual and the ceremony. But I'm getting long and tooth anymore. Got so many things to say right now. So much things to say. So much things to say right now. So much things to say. Thanks and praise. One love, much respect.